The other thing they have in common is that they are within the flow of Calvinist Reformed theology. But the reality is Westminster's on the heels of a Ramist revolution in Puritan theology. How geeky do you want me to get?
Relatively.
So there was a French philosopher named Petrus Ramus. He was French. I don't know why he had a Latin name. But he said that true knowledge consisted of defining and dividing terms. So if you can state in a single sentence what it is, definition, and if you can divide it into its constituent parts, then you know something. This took hold in Puritan Reformed thinking, and Westminster very much shows that thinking. That's what Westminster's doing, right? It's dividing it into its pieces and defining each piece. Scott's Confession is actually fairly medieval in its thinking and in its theology and in its structure. Scott's Confession will be written by 6 Johns. I can't name them all. John Knox, other Johns. Can you name them? The Westminster Assembly was 100 to 150 Englishmen, not Scotsmen, who had different votes and international influence, something that I talked about. Don't know that I can get too much into the doctrinal differences, because I really don't know the Scots Confession that well.
How different is the Heidelberg to the Westminster?
Quite different. Heidelberg's approach to theological disagreement is to elevate the conversation. So as an example, does anyone know what sort of one of the biggest dividing issues is between Lutheran and Reformed Christians? Baptism. What's that?
Communion.
And communion. Yeah. So, yes, but let me go with the communion one because that's the one I was thinking of. So communion, right? Martin Luther's at the Colloquy of Marburg, and the Reformed people, the Swiss, are like, when he says this is my body, he means this represents my body. And Luther has carved with his pocket knife into the table, hoc est corpus meum, this is my body. And throughout the colloquy, he is pounding on the table, this is my body. So Luther doesn't like the Reformed view of communion. So you have Lutherans who believe one thing about communion, and you have the Reformed who believe something else about communion, specifically about the presence of Christ in the supper. Is it consubstantiation or is it spiritual presence? And here's how Heidelberg answered the question. Christ is present in the supper. That's how Heidelberg dealt with it. Westminster doesn't solve problems like that. Westminster's way of solving problems is to define and divide. They are Ramists. So they get it down to the nitty-gritty. What do we actually disagree about here? And they define the terms, and they divide the terms, and they get down to the tiny, tiny pieces that they disagree on, and they find the language that everyone will agree on in that definition, in that division. So that's where Westminster and Heidelberg will be different. Again, it's going to be classic Calvinist theology. It's going to be traditional Reformed theology. Westminster is going to be a lot more academic, scholastic. Westminster is really thinking through the theology. Heidelberg is a bit more pastoral, a bit more heartfelt. Westminster's first statement is, and it's easier to compare Westminster Catechism to Heidelberg Catechism because Heidelberg's a catechism. So Westminster's first one is what is man's chief end? Goes right into the scriptures and the doctrine of God. Heidelberg starts with what is your only comfort in life and in death? much more personal, much more pastoral.